Hello, Steve again with another YouTube B2-C1 video. We're doing a bit of listening today. We're really trying to think about how to practice listening at home. This is an activity that I do with students at school, like all of my videos, and we're actually going to use something that one of my students made as an example, but really the point is it's an exercise that you can do at home yourself. It's about watching videos on YouTube, and okay, lots of people say yes, you can improve your listening by watching series, watching films, watching YouTube, but you can't just passively watch a video and expect to get to a C1 level of English. I think you understand. You need to be a bit more active than that. You need to think about how to do the skills, the things they want in the exam. How can you watch videos actively with notes, with activities to actually get to that C1 level? So we're going to do an example today with a video about Monument Valley. Like I said, I asked my students to find a video that they're interested in and then make some questions like you would have in a B2-C1 exam, like gap fill, multiple choice, these kind of questions. And then we collected them all and we did one each lesson throughout the course. So we had 5-10 minutes listening at the start of like one lesson a week to be regularly boosting that listening. So we're going to start with the example. My student watched this video, which you can go and find. It's by Vox, the periodic, I'm speaking Spanish, the journalistic channel that makes interesting videos. I will play it and you need to answer these questions. We have a bit of a mix, some gap fill like you would have in the listening part 2 for B2 and C1, and some multiple choice, which are a bit more like part 1 or part 3 for B2 and C1. It varies a bit, but a good level of questions here. So I'll play the video. You can obviously watch it twice. I'm going to insert the video, I think, try and do that with my latest tech skills. Not sure how copyright works, but we'll see what happens. You need to answer the questions.
Ah, the West. Mythical home of Roadrunner, John Wayne, and families in wagons, heading for a fresh start on the rugged frontier. Wide open sky and these big red rock formations make up its stereotypical backdrop, the one in movies and cartoons.
Well, there's gotta be a phone or a gas station around here somewhere, honey.
But when you look at a bunch of those movies back to back, you start to notice something. This image of the West kind of looks the same whenever we see it. And that's because this specific group of formations is unique to one place, Monument Valley. So how did this one area become a symbol of the American West? Monument Valley is on the Arizona-Utah border inside the Navajo Nation reservation. Its towering red sandstone formations, called buttes, rise hundreds of feet above the desert floor. For centuries, only Native Americans, specifically the Paiute and Navajo, occupied this remote landscape, fielding conflicts with the US government. Non-Indigenous people began to visit in the early 20th century, and in the early 1920s, Colorado sheep trader Harry Golding and his wife Leona set up a trading post on the Utah side of Monument Valley, which at the time was just outside of the Navajo reservation. In the 1930s, this area was hit hard by drought, the Great Depression, and a forced reduction of livestock by the US government, which slashed a vital source of income. Golding tried for years to draw attention to Monument Valley's stunning landscape, thinking tourism could help boost the local economy. But according to Golding, the area's big break didn't come until 1938, when he brought photos of Monument Valley to Hollywood. Stagecoach, directed by John Ford and shot primarily on location in Monument Valley, revolutionized the Western, elevating the genre from the low-budget pulp reputation it had developed in the 1930s, what's known as a B-movie.
What does it say, Dad? Don't mean a thing, son.
Into one of Hollywood's most popular genres for the next 20 years. It was also the breakout role for American icon John Wayne, who until this point had spent years starring in B-westerns, like 1933's Riders of Destiny.
Make it fast, Slippery. This is your last draw.
Stagecoach mainstreamed the Western, and it's here that audiences began to associate Monument Valley with the mythic American West, an epic, isolated landscape full of potential, the kind of place where outlaws and outcasts could find a fresh start. Following Ford's lead, other filmmakers began using Monument Valley as their Western backdrops, including Ford himself, 7 more times. Most notably in The Searchers, often regarded as the ultimate Western. The movie takes place in Texas.
What's that got to do with us?
But that didn't matter. By then, Monument Valley was a cliche. And cliches are useful for storytelling. They signal to the audience what kind of story this is, or set a familiar tone in advertising. Those buttes are so ingrained in pop culture that they can be used as shorthand for stories of Western adventure.
Wait, where are we?
Okay, you've watched the video. Here come the answers. So your gap fill, they are unique. That's what they said in the video. The area's big break came in 1938, the moment where it became famous. This Monument Valley, obviously, I mean, we get the idea, the general meaning, that we will recognize this. It's from the cowboy films, the Western films. But it's a real place, and this video is about how it became famous and why it's famous and so on. When did it begin? When C, the person who lived there, sent pictures to a Hollywood studio. The other ones are all slightly wrong. What's the movie that changed reputation is Stagecoach. Slightly difficult one, but I think you know the word stage, you know the word coach, and Stagecoach, put them together. Stagecoach is the old wagon that they used to drive, isn't it, in the Westerns, I think. But it's also maybe a type of bus, but that's my lack of American culture showing through. What was his job before? He was in low-budget movies. Number 6, this is great vocabulary, outlaws and outcasts. And number 7, the perfect Western was The Searchers. It was the ultimate Western. It was the perfect Western. So there we go. That's how you've done that. But obviously the point of today's video is to really think about getting the most out of listening like this. So what I did was I went on YouTube. I clicked ... show transcript. You know, it comes up. I downloaded the transcript. I read it carefully and I thought, wow, this is full of useful B2-C1 English. It's a real holistic approach to learning because we've listened to it, we've understood it, we've maybe found it interesting, but what can we really learn from it? We can learn some great vocab, use of English part 1. So I made this myself, and you can do the same thing, as I say in lots of my videos. Take the transcript, think of words that you think, oh, that's a typical expression, is it? Like, start is a collocation, it's a way of saying it. Well, that I know in my notes that that's the correct way of saying it. It's not these other words that are similar. I mean, the point here is you can make questions, or you can just, the important thing is the mentality of identifying the kind of vocab and expressions that you'd be expected to know for B2 and C1. Anyway, having said all that, same as always, pause the video, answer these questions. Here come the answers. It's a fresh start. You make a fresh start, that's the expression. Number 2, it's a wide open sky, because it's a very big open sky in these big, in the middle of nowhere, America. You start to, well, I guess you could say identify. I was about to say identify, but spot is better. I've deliberately made that very difficult. Identify is sort of possible, but spot is probably slightly better because it's like you've already identified it, but you are going to spot something. What can you see here? Number 4, this specific group. That's definitely the best word there. And number 5, it became a symbol. The other ones don't fit, do they? It converted into. And number 6, the formations rise above the desert floor. Something rises. I raise it, something rises. They spring is a bit too energetic, and they elevate. It's just not right, is it? Right, we can do the same for part 2, apart from I've messed up, and I've already given you one of the answers, but we're going to leave that in because it's 8:20 and class is starting in a minute, so we're not going to bother editing this. Pause the video, use of English part 2. Obviously, I've done the same thing. You can see just in a couple of paragraphs, I've found 6 possible questions that you should know for part 2. For question 4, by the way, there are other possible answers. So maybe I've given you one answer, deliberately, of course. Can you think of an alternative possible answer for number 4? Pause the video, do all the questions. Here come the answers. It was hit by drought. That's what did it. We're talking about who did it or what did it. It was by a drought. Number 2, it's a source of income. Number 3, you draw attention to something. Number 4, tourism could or would or might or may. We need a modal auxiliary that it could boost the economy. Number 5, it's according to Golding, according to, typical B2-C1 phrase. And number 6, it's a time marker, isn't it? The break didn't come until 1938. Okay, last activity is use of English part 3. This one's slightly more difficult to make. You can see I've needed to take 3 paragraphs to find 6 questions, but they are there. All of these B2-C1 type word transformations are in normal English. You can learn them by reading carefully, by paying attention to the things you're watching. Pause the video, transform the word in number 1 so it fits the gap, thinking about the sentence structure and the context. Here come the answers. Number 1 is primarily. It was shot primarily. How was it shot? Primarily on location. Number 2, what did it do? It revolutionized. With an S or with a Z is fine. Number 3, we need an adjective, don't we? How are we describing the American West? It's mythical, or mythic is also possible, like mythic quest. Number 4, we are saying this was notable, so it was most notably in the searches. And number 5, of course, cliches are useful for storytelling because they signal to the audience what kind of story it is. And number 6, advert. This is a common word to have to transform, and we are talking about advertising or advertisements. We need the noun because it's this topic. Okay, so that's all the use of English from a little script like this. Point is, you can do this yourself. You can practice regularly. You're listening in the ear gym. It's free, it's on YouTube. You need to meet these goals by doing it like this. Regular, intentional practice, curating your YouTube, thinking about watching the right kind of videos that will give you this kind of vocab. Okay, thank you.